Hey guys, how you doing today? I'm Bruce Kurtz from Maker's Origin, so I'll be with you for about 15 or 20 minutes, give you a quick talk about go-to-market strategies and a framework for doing that. So I have my presentation in a slightly different format. It's not in PowerPoint, so hopefully it's going to look okay here. So this is me. I'm Bruce. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I've actually been in Shenzhen, China for the last 3 years, and now I'm working for Maker's Origin, which is an end-to-end hardware accelerator. We're also a factory and do some other things that I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? Okay. All right, great. So I'm from the US, so most of my experience is doing marketing in the US, but I've been in Shenzhen for the last 3 years. I've worked at an e-commerce startup. I spent the last 2 years at TCL, Alcatel, doing mobile phone marketing, and now I'm at this wonderful company. So some of the other brands I've worked for are up there, both in B2B and in B2C. So as I'm getting started, I want to tell you a quick story. And I think you guys have stories too. Stories about marketing, things that you observe in your daily life. So this is one of mine that's stuck with me for a while. So I want to tell you about it. So I lived in Ventura, California for 3 years. So does any of you guys know where Ventura, California is or visited there? Anybody? Oh, I see some nodding heads. Yeah, it's a great area. It's a sleepy beachside town. So from the main street there, you can actually walk a few minutes, 3-5 minutes, and get to the beach. So I lived there, and I was working for a company over in the UK. So I worked from home. With my type of personality, I like to be around people a lot. So I found myself actually going to Starbucks on Main Street every day because I wanted to work, be around people, kind of a nice environment, and drink a lot of coffee. So that's what I did. So my schedule would be get up, get dressed, go to Starbucks if I wasn't going around doing business and marketing meetings, working at Starbucks and going home. So I do that every day. And the one day I was leaving Starbucks, got out of my car, driving home, and I was driving 5 minutes or so, and I passed, wow, there's a new coffee shop. How interesting, because I like to drink coffee. So I stopped in, and it was an independent coffee shop. Nicely decorated, a little bright. In Starbucks, it's you kind of know what you get, but you also know the Starbucks strategy. That a lot of the Starbucks locations in different local environments, local towns, they really are embedded into the community. People like to go there. They don't necessarily see it as a big corporate giant. It's like part of their lifestyle. So I went into this coffee shop. It was completely empty. I was the only person in there, and it was me and the owner. So I looked around. I was like, oh, okay, your menu's all right. And I had a little chat with the owner, and I said, wow, that's great, there's a new coffee shop, and it's really close to where I live. And the owner's like, yeah, we just opened up a few weeks ago, we're pretty new. And I said, yeah, I usually go to Starbucks, and now maybe I have another option. The owner looked at me and kind of wrinkled her nose, and she said, oh, we don't compete with Starbucks. Like, how dare I say that word, Starbucks? And I thought, that's kind of interesting, because I think you do compete with Starbucks. So I got in my car and I left and I drove home. I was busy. And to be honest, I did have an intention to stop there sooner or later. But I like the Starbucks menu. I kind of know what I want to get. And so I continued to go to Starbucks. So you can probably guess a few months later, I went on a few business trips and such. I came back, driving back to my home. And sure enough, that business, that nice local quaint coffee shop that wasn't Starbucks was out of business. So I was thinking about that. And for me, the takeaway was, yeah, you're a business owner, you make a business. You can try and define who you are and what your market is, but ultimately the market's going to decide. So yeah, this owner, for whatever reason, she said she didn't compete against Starbucks, but honestly she did. The local Starbucks were very popular, and she didn't get enough business to stay around, so she had to unfortunately exit the coffee business, at least in that area. So that's the story I want to share with you. So keep that in mind as we're going through this presentation. So let's get started. I like dogs. There's a picture of a dog jumping in a swimming pool. Keep it kind of interesting. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about go-to-market framework. So you can see it up here. It's really in 3 different areas: what to sell, where to promote, and how to reach your customer base. So this is more strategic in nature. You're attending this presentation, maybe you thought, wow, maybe this guy's going to give me 5 great tips on how to optimize my Twitter campaigns. No, I'm not going to do that, because I don't know what your business is, maybe Twitter isn't really the right marketing tactic for you. So you can talk to me about that offline, or you can talk to a marketing consultant. But this is a little higher level. This is about the structure of how you'll think about your go-to-market strategy. And then tactics like marketing on Twitter, doing other things, they kind of fit down the chain for that. So as we get started, first, we'll just level set. When you're creating a product or service, obviously you need to think about your customer. Who is your ideal customer, and what are their pain points? It seems very basic, but a lot of companies move very quickly, and they should think more about the stage. And then when you're doing that, your output, one of the main outputs you should get is creating a customer profile. And also, by creating that customer profile, you can use that as a resource as you're developing your key messaging, how you're gonna talk about your business or service to your end market, whether it's B2B or B2C. So that's an example of a marketing persona. There are different ways to do this. You can actually write like a one paragraph, talk about your business in the first person, make it a person. But that's just one example. But it's a good thing to do as a kind of a frame of reference. So now we'll talk about what to sell. So you have a product or service, and whether it's B2B or B2C, you need to think of your unique selling proposition, your value proposition, right? Like, what is it? Like, hopefully you have one, or if you don't, you're probably going to compete maybe just on price, right? Like, maybe your whole value proposition is you're not really different, but you can sell it a lot cheaper. And I think you know that's probably going to fail, because there'll always eventually be someone bigger than you that can manufacture or produce it at a less cost, and you'll go out of business. So what is your value proposition? How are you differentiated? And think of that not just from your standpoint as being the founder, but from an outside source, because ultimately your market is going to be looking at you and thinking about how are you different. So think about that back to the coffee shop example. How is that little coffee shop different? Honestly, the only thing I can think of for myself is really two things. One, it was closer to my house, but hey, I have a car, and in California, a lot of places, people don't use public transportation. Really, in Ventura, they don't. So you drive a car, you go everywhere. So yeah, it's a little closer to my house than Starbucks, not a big deal. It was locally owned, so it was a local business, not a big corporate brand. Yeah, there's some value. I guess that's some differentiation. But again, Starbucks has done a good job in a lot of local communities, to be perfectly honest, of really embedding themselves in the community where people don't look at them as the big corporate giant. So yeah, kind of two kind of shaky things on differentiation for that local coffee company. And then, of course, what is your pricing strategy? No matter what you're doing, product or service, you have to think about your pricing strategy. So your outputs, one of the things that you would have, obviously, is a pricing plan, and there are different ways to do that. This is just one output example. And your product life cycle. Whether you have a product or a service, you should think about where you're going with your delivery of your product, and at what point you need to start iterating as your product gets mature to build the next iteration of your product and sell it and keep it fresh and get new sales. So now I'll talk about where to promote. So your marketplace, the potential marketplace. How big is your marketplace, right? And is it scalable? So they're basic things, but again, this is a good frame of reference for you. So as you're looking at this, you can look at segmentation of your market size, different areas, geographic, demographic, and such. And this will help you continue to fine-tune your audience and segment them into different buckets. And then in the future, you can do better marketing because you can have different areas of segmentation. And also, you can use different analytics tools. There are free analytics tools on the web. There's paid research, different types of things that you can access to. And then the fun stuff, how to reach. How are you going to reach your key target market? So yeah, at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned maybe you came here thinking I'm going to talk about Twitter marketing. So I will mention Twitter. That's one of the channels to expose your product or service to the market. It's one of many things you can do. So as you're thinking of the different channels that you can access and tap into, also think of which ones cost money, which ones are free, which ones are for marketing, really to get to a sales point, to get an action for the customer, and which ones are more brand building, more PR exposure that don't have necessarily a direct connection to ROI. So I have a photo here of a sales and marketing funnel. So you maybe have seen this. Some companies do a good job explaining this, essentially where they take a funnel like this and they really explain about the relationship between marketing and sales teams, and then how you can take a prospect from the top of the funnel. A prospect is really anybody in the world that's walking by and sees something about your brand, about your business. But they may not be a lead. So as a prospect becomes a lead, they come into the marketing and sales funnel. They start to understand about your company. Maybe they're interested in it. They go through the consideration stage. If you are the type of business where you have a sales team, then you may pass them off to your sales team in terms of a lead generation handoff. Eventually, whether you're a B2B or B2C product, then you get to a sale. So when you think about what you're selling, you should also reference the marketing and sales funnel in terms of what you're doing, what channels you're using, and how are they going to interact with the marketing funnel and getting to the end stage of the purchase, about making money. And a fun little sketch on multi-channel marketing. So yeah, there are a lot of different ways that you can do marketing on different types of channels. So we won't get into the specifics of all of them here, but you know there are a lot, and here are some different examples. Many of you in the makerspace obviously have seen most or all of these before. What you may not know, and this is a soft sales pitch for my company. My company is actually owned by a larger Chinese conglomerate called SunPower Group. So we actually have tons of retail outlets around the world that happen to be owned by SunPower. So again, whatever your marketing channel strategy is, map it back to the other points in your overall go-to-market plan. So there you have it. Again, this is just it seems like a very simple structure, but this is more of a frame of reference for you as you're going through your go-to-market planning in these different areas of what to sell, where to promote, and how to reach. So a little bit about Maker's Origin. That's the company I work for. I mentioned that we're owned by SunPower Group, so it's a huge holdings company in China with 1.3 billion RMB in annual turnover. So what we do in Maker's Origin, we really do three things. We can help makers mass produce, mass manufacture their products. We can also do product aggregation, where if our factory can't create everything, and to be honest, yeah, we don't have certain capabilities such as textile manufacturing, but what we can do is source from some of the suppliers that we have and assemble the product in our factory. And the third thing that we do, obviously, is our core strength, is the front-end retail distribution. And that's where we have 9,000 points of sale. Both we own a lot of our retail distribution points, and then we also have partnerships with major key players around the world. So that's it, quick presentation. I want to give you the structure so you can think about these things as you're developing. The fun part is in developing a go-to-market plan is getting into the tactics, to be honest. Yeah, my product's great, it's exciting, let's put up the Kickstarter, let's start doing the social media. But if you rush into that, you'll probably have problems. So as you're looking at the framework, then even take a little piece of paper and write down what your plan is in the different areas, and then start executing. That is my presentation. I want to see if anyone has any questions for me. Any question? Yes, in the front.
Hi. How do you see the difference between doing marketing in the US and in China?
Marketing, direct marketing inside
marketing
China?
in general, like in what you do, marketing. How do you see the difference in doing that in China and in the US?
Okay, let me try and answer that for you. Well, the ecosystem when you're marketing to Americans in the US is very different. I mean, the brands that are strong there are different than the brands that are strong in China. Also, the consumer buying behavior is very different in China. So yeah, I mentioned to you that my background, most of my marketing experience has been in the US, marketing to US customers. And yeah, when I came over to Shenzhen and I was learning more about the China market, yeah, the the consumer behavior, the way people think in mainland is very different. And to be perfectly honest with you, my strength is marketing brands to Western markets, to the U.S. and Europe, South America, LATAM, that type of thing. It's a very different marketing to mainland China, and so that's not my expertise. But yeah, it's very different. Any other questions?
Any more?
Sure, what's your question?
So what are the common mistakes that, I mean, you mentioned there are mistakes when people try to rush in to getting their product to market, but do you notice any common mistakes for makers, people who start out as makers, maybe don't have this expertise in building a startup, and when they try to go that direction, what's the kind of help that you guys offer that maybe a lot of these guys usually miss?
That's a good question. So I'll answer that a couple different ways. One, some companies, when they're, everyone's excited. You're a maker, you have a vision to create a product. You work on a prototype, that type of thing. One of the things that we can do at Maker's Origin is because we have a lot of experience, our factory's been manufacturing products for 40 years. So one of the things that makers can do is tap into our marketplace research. For example, like we've had, obviously, like we have confidentialities, but if a maker comes to us with their idea, and we have all this background, all this knowledge of other makers we've talked to and industries we've seen be successful and that type of thing, we can kind of share that experience back with the maker. So, oh, yeah, your product's interesting, but have you thought about this and that type of thing? Strengths and weaknesses about the product potential in the marketplace. So yeah, we can do that because, again, we have that rich history both in the manufacturing and also through our retail network. So for example, I'm sure many of you from the US, and also me, I'm from the US, I didn't know that SandPower actually owned all the Brookstone retail outlets. So SandPower actually purchased the Brookstone retail chain a number of years ago. So again, through that, there's also data acquisition. There's a lot of data points and data collection that SandPower has, so the consumer research data. So from that experience standpoint, that we can bring that and we can kind of share that expertise, that conversation back to the maker. So yeah, hopefully that helps answer your question.
Any more?
All right. Well, thanks. Hope you enjoy the event.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for the amazing sharing. If you still got any questions for Bruce, you can just ask him directly at the floor.